Keep your gas! This first down! We won't back down! Watch out!
The message was very clear, and I think it spoke volumes to the Democrats about the seriousness of the situation.
Trump threatens Insurrection Act as protests erupt after Minneapolis ICE shootings. Good evening and welcome. Tonight, tensions are escalating in Minneapolis after another shooting involving a federal immigration agent, and now President Donald Trump is threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act, a centuries-old law that would allow the deployment of U.S. troops on American soil. The warning comes amid days of protests, clashes between demonstrators and federal officers, and growing legal and political fallout over immigration enforcement tactics. Here's what we know so far. Protests flared overnight near the Bishop Henry Whipple Federal Building in Minneapolis after a federal agent shot and injured a man during what authorities describe as a targeted traffic stop. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the suspect, a Venezuelan national, allegedly resisted arrest and violently assaulted the agent. During the struggle, two other individuals reportedly attacked the officer using a snow shovel and a broom handle. The officer then fired what DHS calls defensive shots, striking the suspect in the leg. All three individuals fled into a nearby apartment, barricaded themselves, and were later taken into custody. Witness video obtained by CNN shows federal agents breaching a Minneapolis home late Wednesday night. Flashbangs were deployed, smoke filled the area, and ramming sounds could be heard as officers entered the residence. There's more than a dozen of them. The injured suspect was removed from the home and transported to an ambulance. Within hours, demonstrators began gathering near the scene and tensions quickly escalated. Federal officers deployed tear gas, pepper balls, and flashbang-style munitions as protesters moved into the driveway of the federal building. Some demonstrators kicked and struck vehicles entering and leaving the facility. At around 10 p.m., Customs and Border Protection officers advanced in formation, pushing protesters back. Moments later, a second team approached from the side. Out of nowhere, the other team came from another direction and started firing percussion grenades, then tear gas. A CNN crew on scene was hit with pepper balls after an object was thrown toward federal agents. Federal authorities say several arrests have now been made. The FBI is offering up to $100,000 for information related to vandalized agency vehicles. Some cars were spray-painted with messages like FK ICE and America, land of the obey or die. One suspect has been arrested after allegedly stealing FBI body armor and weaponry from a federal vehicle. Attorney General Pam Bondi described the suspect as a known gang member with prior violent offenses. FBI Director Kash Patel says more arrests are coming. Against this backdrop, President Donald Trump issued a stark warning. If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the insurrectionists, I will institute the Insurrection Act. The Insurrection Act first passed in 1790 to allow the president to deploy military forces domestically under limited circumstances. It was last used in 1990 during the Los Angeles riots. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt defended the president's comments. The Insurrection Act is a tool at the president's disposal. His message spoke very loud and clear. Civil rights groups are pushing back forcefully. The ACLU of Minnesota has filed a class action lawsuit alleging federal agents violated the Fourth Amendment by unlawfully detaining U.S. citizens in some cases based solely on perceived ethnicity. The lawsuit details incidents involving Somali and Latino Americans allegedly detained, handcuffed, and questioned without warrants or probable cause. These practices are illegal, unconstitutional, and morally reprehensible. The Department of Homeland Security strongly denies the allegations, calling them categorically false. Federal agents cannot demand proof of citizenship without reasonable suspicion. Ethnicity alone is not enough, and that's been clearly established by Supreme Court precedent. More than 21 million U.S. citizens do not carry proof of citizenship with them, raising serious constitutional concerns. In North Minneapolis, the morning after the clashes looked deceptively calm. Children boarded school buses, debris was cleared, but fear remains. Residents organized overnight patrols to protect immigrant workers at local businesses. Schools in Minneapolis and St. Paul are now offering virtual learning options for students who feel unsafe attending in person. We've lived through this before after George Floyd. We're living it again. The situation remains volatile. Federal agents say there are no plans to withdraw from Minnesota. City and state leaders are urging calm, while protests continue nightly. President Trump has not yet invoked the Insurrection Act, but his warning has intensified an already combustible standoff between federal authority, local leadership, and community activists. This is a developing story, and the stakes are high for civil liberties, public safety, and the balance of power between state and federal government. We will continue to follow the situation closely. Thank you for watching.